An Account of Egypt by Herotodus. For many that don't know, Herodotus is a Greek historian often referred to as the father of history in the Western society. His work is studied by scholars today as a vital source for understanding ancient history. One of his most famous work is Histories, a book divided into 9 volumes, each named after one of the 9 Greek muses. This book is named after Euterpe and is entirely focused on ancient Egypt. Now, around 5th century BCE, Herodotus traveled to Egypt. He documented what he saw, heard, and learned. His writing serves as one of the earliest and most detailed outsider accounts of ancient Egypt life and culture. He begins with briefly introducing the Persian king Cambyses II, who defeated the pharaoh Sotmek III and conquered Egypt. So, at the time Herodotus had traveled to Egypt, it was under the Persian Empire. Herodotus was amazed with the geography, focusing on the Nile River, which flows from south to north. The river annual flood would deposit rich fertilized soil, helping the Egyptian agriculture thrive. Herodotus famously refers to Egypt as the gift of the river, highlighting how central the Nile River was to the country's prosperity. He describes Egypt's vast landscape and how it would take days to travel between cities in the Upper Egypt to the Lower Egypt. One of the most fascinating parts is how Herodotus compares the Greek culture and the Egyptian culture. He notes that the two civilizations were almost opposite, from gender roles to hygiene practice. For instance, the Greek men would often grow their hair, the Egyptian men shaved their hair. The Egyptian women held roles and status very different from the Greek counterparts. But despite their cultural contrast, Herodotus notes religious similarities. He believed that many of the Greek gods were derived from the Egyptian religion. The Egyptians were extremely devout, more so than the Greeks. He writes that they were deeply committed to their own traditions and uninterested in learning in other foreign customs. A quote from this book is that they were religious beyond all other men. Now, one of my favorite sections is Herodotus' account of the Egyptian priests. Herodotus writes about them in high regards. Throughout this book, he mentions them as like a primary source for information about Egypt's history and religion. The priests were record keepers of Egypt's history pretty much. One of the records that the priests kept track of was the king's list, dating back to the first king, King Menes. This is nothing for what Herodotus had seen before in his travels. The priests maintained detailed accounts of their traditions, their ceremonies, and their rituals. I also want to mention that the priests were extremely proactive about cleanliness, shaving every hair on their body, bathing several times a day, wearing a fresh linen garment. It's a level of hygiene far beyond what the Greeks had practiced. And he also touches on circumcision, stating that the Egyptians and that the Ethiopians were the earliest culture to practice it. But the part that the most readers will probably find most fascinating is his detailed account of mummification. And Herodotus walks us through the entire process, from the tools used to the removal of the organs, from the roles played by the embalmers, and finally wrapping up the body and placement into the sarcophagus. It's incredibly detailed and reads like a mummification how-to guide. Now, there has been long-standing debate about the race of the ancient Egyptian. A quote from this book about the race and features of the ancient Egyptian was that they were dark-skinned and having woolly hair. Now, my final thoughts. This book was, of course, written in ancient Greek and has been translated into English by the classical scholar George Campbell Macaulay. Herodotus' writing style is engaging and story-like. It almost feels like you're reading a travel blog. He asks questions, talks to the locals, and shares what he discovers. You could tell he was genuinely curious. Now, I did spend some time Googling some words. I first listened to the audio and thought I need to get this book ASAP. It is available online on PDF and on audio. This book is less than 80 pages. Took me like 3 to 4 days to read, and I really enjoyed it and find it incredibly informational. Herodotus is someone I'll definitely be mentioning a lot on this channel. Please let me know in the comments below if you have read this book and what you enjoyed about it, or if you plan on reading it. The links are below. Subscribe for more.